Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Hope Logan had finally found some serenity in the glittering yet volatile world of Los Angeles fashion, where Forrester Creations reigned supreme in terms of beauty and intrigue. After years of back-and-forth heartbreak, betrayals, and numerous triangles involving Liam Spencer and others, she remarried him in a beautiful wedding supervised by their daughter Beth. The vows were reaffirmed with promises of eternity, surrounded by family and friends who drank to their everlasting love. Hope was ecstatic, confident that this time it would be permanent. Liam, ever the dedicated father and husband, showered her with affection, envisioning a future full of stability for Beth and possibly more children. Their house resonated with laughter once more, and for a little moment, the shadows of previous mistakes appeared to recede. However, serenity in this world was always transient. Thomas Forrester, the talented but disturbed designer who was previously fascinated with Hope, returned from Paris unexpectedly. He arrived with his son Douglas in tow, claiming a desire to recover his position at Forrester Creations, notably as the main designer for Hope for the Future, the brand he co-created with Hope during their passionate romantic entanglement years before. Steffi Forrester, Thomas's sister and co-CEO, welcomed him back with open arms, seeing his homecoming as a positive for the company. Rich Forrester, their father, agreed, valuing family legacy above all else. This choice put Hope in an unpleasant position. She had to fire her half-brother Deke, who had only recently joined the team and demonstrated promise. The day Hope broke the news to Deke was heartbreaking. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she explained that management had reinstated Thomas, leaving little possibility for Deke's involvement. Deke, devastated but understanding, took it gracefully, albeit the ache of rejection lingered. Hope felt enormous shame, hugging him tightly and offering to help him in any way she could. Little did she realize, this was simply the start of the unraveling. Thomas didn't waste any time. He requested a private meeting with Hope in the design office, where they had exchanged passionate kisses, late-night inspirations, and future plans. As he entered, his gaze fixed on hers with that familiar intensity. He congratulated her on her wedding, remarking how Douglas raved about it and how delighted Beth must be. Hope nodded nicely, keeping her guard up and recalling herself of her vow to Liam. Thomas informed her that he respected her marriage, that he had moved on personally, and that his sole concern was professional. "We made magic together once," he remarked softly, scattering sketches across the table. "Hope for the future soared because of us. Imagine what we could do now." Hope attempted to focus on the designs, but being alone with Thomas brought back memories. The way he described her as his muse, the gentle brush of his fingers on hers as they pointed to fabric swatches, it all felt frighteningly familiar. She drew back, insisting on boundaries, but Thomas's presence was irresistible. Their partnership became more intense over the next few weeks. Late evenings at work were common, with brainstorming sessions that turned into personal talks. Thomas told anecdotes from Paris about how he had grown, the therapy he had received, and how he no longer carried toxic obsessions. Hope listened, catching glimpses of the guy she had loved profoundly. Liam saw the shift right away. Hope arrived home later, preoccupied by family dinners. Liam's expression darkened when she described working closely with Thomas. He knew all too well how Thomas had handled circumstances in the past, hiding lies about Beth and obsessively pursuing Hope even after she married. "He's not over you," Liam cautioned Beth one evening as they put her in bed. "And working with him every day? It's a recipe for disaster." Hope defended her actions as professional, assuring Liam that her heart was with him. However, doubts crept in for both. Liam was insecure, revisiting old worries, while Hope struggled with the creative spark she only felt with Thomas. As Christmas approached, the stress increased. At a Forrester family party, Thomas pulled Hope aside beneath the mistletoe for a holiday toast, claiming innocence. Their gazes connected, and Hope leaned closer, overcome by champagne and nostalgia. Their lips met in a brief but electrifying kiss. It was gentle at first, then intense, reigniting a passion that had never died. Hope recoiled in amazement, her palm shooting to her mouth. "This can't happen," she said as she fled the room. Thomas stood there with a pleased but conflicted smile on his face, knowing he had broken her determination. The affair started in secret. Stolen time in the design studio after hours, late-night texts masquerading as professional chats. Thomas was attentive in ways Liam hadn't been recently, applauding her visions and making her feel truly valued as a designer and a woman. Hope justified it to herself. Liam was safe and cozy, while Thomas was fiery and inspiring. Their encounters became more daring, a passionate embrace against the cutting table, clothes shed quickly, bodies entwined with the urgency of forbidden desire. Hope felt alive again, guilty yet excited. Thomas whispered promises of leaving everything for her and creating a life with Douglas and Beth as a family. Liam realized something was wrong. Hope remained aloof, finding excuses for late nights. He confided in his father, Bill, who encouraged him to fight for his marriage. Liam surprised Hope at work one day, entering in just as Thomas's hand lingered around her waist. The confrontation was explosive. "What the hell is this?" Liam exclaimed, his voice breaking. Hope stuttered protestations, but the guilt in her eyes spoke volumes. Thomas came forward, stating that he still loved her and that they belonged together. Liam's world shattered. He accused Hope of repeating the same patterns and never completely committing to him because of her attraction to the Forrestos. The aftermath tore through families. Hope's mother, Brooke Logan, was horrified, pleading with her daughter to call it off and salvage her marriage. Ridge supported Thomas, viewing Hope's acts as proof that they were meant to be. Steffi advised Hope to keep away from her brother if she was unable to commit entirely. But Hope was torn, confessing to Thomas that she, too, loved him and that the affair had reawakened sentiments she believed were long suppressed. Liam could not bear it. Nights spent alone at home, staring at family photos and rehashing the betrayal. He sincerely loved Hope, but the suffering was excruciating. The incessant waffling and secrets recalled their previous divorces. One evening, following a furious confrontation in which Hope acknowledged to the affair but begged forgiveness, Liam packed a bag. "I can't do this again," he exclaimed, tears flowing down his cheeks. "I've fought for us every time, but you always choose drama and excitement over stability. Beth needs a father who isn't broken." Hope wailed, reaching for him, but he drew back. "I'm leaving town. For good this time. Maybe some distance will help us both figure out what we really want." The next morning, Liam bid farewell to Beth, promising to visit frequently, but needing time away. He drove away from Los Angeles, possibly to visit his mother or to cleanse his mind on a global scale. The Spencer jet lifted off, carrying a heartbroken man who had reached his limit. Hope was dashed. The affair with Thomas lasted briefly, but without the secrecy, it lost its appeal. Thomas pressed for commitment, but Hope was heartbroken for Liam and the family she had shattered. Guilt gripped her, particularly after Beth inquired about Daddy. The Logan-Forrester divide widened as murmurs permeated Forrester creations. Brooke and Ridge disagreed about their children's decisions, while Steffi relished in Hope's demise. Months passed, and I was trapped in a loop of remorse. Hope ended her relationship with Thomas, realizing that the passion was transitory in comparison to the profound love she felt for Liam. Thomas, hurt but resilient, remained focused on his designs and Douglas. Hope immersed herself into her work, but each sketch brought back memories of everything she'd lost. Rumors circulated that Liam was seeing someone new far away, seeking serenity without the commotion. Hope's impetuous affair ultimately lost her everything. Liam's departure left a gap in Los Angeles, reminding us that some betrayals are too deep to mend quickly. The fashion world carried on, and new collections were out, but Hope walked through it all with a heavy heart, wondering if she'd ever forgive herself or whether Liam would return. The bold and the beautiful world continued to spin, full of love, loss, and the everlasting hope for redemption, but for the time being, Hope's decisions had resulted in intense loneliness. As the seasons changed, Rumors of Liam's return circulated, but he remained away, establishing a new life. Hope concentrated on Beth, promising to do better. Thomas took consolation in his paintings, occasionally glancing at Hope with unspoken desire. The affair erupted and burned out, leaving ashes where a family had stood. Liam's choice to leave town was a last attempt of self-preservation in a life fraught with romantic turbulence. However, in soap operas like this, nothing lasts forever. Doors remained open, and hearts slowly healed. Perhaps our paths will cross again someday, but for now, the hurt persisted, a witness to the deadly force of unbridled yearning. Hope learned the hard way that some fires warm you briefly before scorching all in their path. Liam, wherever he went, carried both the scars and the freedom of a new beginning. And Thomas, ever the complicated soul, waited in the wings, knowing that the game of love in their universe would never completely end. Hope, Thomas, and Liam's story continued to emerge in subtle ways, such as glances across boardrooms and tense family occasions. Beth grew, and her questions pierced Hope's spirit. Brooke provided unending support, while Bill Spencer watched after his kid from afar. The affair's repercussions touched everyone. Steffi reinforced her friendship with Finn, grateful for stability, while Ridge reflected on his own complicated personal history. Hope finally sought treatment, confronted with her patterns of seeking affirmation in intensity rather than consistency. Thomas did the same, focusing on his impulsivity. But Liam's absence was the most audible statement. He sent Beth notes and contacted her on trips, but he refused to return while Hope was involved in the Forrester drama. Years later, or even sooner, given how time bends in this world, fate may intervene. A crisis at Forrester, a health scare, or Beth's plea might entice Liam back. But, until then, the affair's consequences remained. Liam's departure, a community left behind, and hearts broken beyond repair. Hope stood on the balcony of the Forrester home one evening, gazing at the city lights and murmuring to the wind, "I'm sorry." Her affair with Thomas had been a mistake formed of nostalgia and unmet desires, but it cost her the man who had always put her first. Liam is somewhere out there, healing slowly and free of the cycle. This chapter concluded with sorrow, a cautionary tale woven into the fabric of their existence. Love in Los Angeles was daring, beautiful, and sometimes violent. Hope's decision reverberated throughout the corridors of Forrester Creations, a reminder that certain bridges, once burned, take time to mend. Hope never dreamed that one rash decision could upend so many lives at once. For years, she had prided herself on being the moral compass in a world where treachery felt nearly normal. She believed in loyalty, family, and doing the right thing, even if it was difficult. However, somewhere between tiredness, loneliness, and unresolved emotions, the lines she had sworn she would never cross began to blur. When Thomas reappeared in her life, not as the man defined by obsession and manipulation, but as someone who appeared transformed, attentive, and vulnerable, Hope found herself on unknown emotional terrain. Thomas worked tirelessly to showcase a fresh version of himself. Therapy, accountability, and patience, he spoke the language of redemption well. Many others wondered whether his metamorphosis was full or just persuasive, but Hope saw something different. She saw a man who heard her complaints and understood the weight she felt as a mother, wife, and fashion industry leader. Liam had been aloof for months, preoccupied with his own concerns and judgments, frequently retiring into quiet rather than communicating. Thomas, however, was present. He observed when Hope became overwhelmed, doubted herself, or felt invisible. At first, their connection seemed innocuous. Long chats after work, shared moments of vulnerability, and mutual respect for each other's artistic perspective. Hope persuaded herself it was just friendship, a professional tie forged through shared history and growth. However, emotional intimacy has a way of getting past intellectual limitations. Hope's reliance on Thomas caused her to distance herself from Liam, even though she didn't realize it. She began hiding grins, deleting texts, and making excuses for late nights at work. Guilt followed her like a shadow, but she ignored it, convinced herself that nothing had actually happened. That illusion shattered the night, and everything altered. It wasn't planned, and that made everything worse. A moment of weakness, a confession of feelings neither of them had previously uttered aloud, and there was no more lying. The affair was brief but passionate, stemming from years of unresolved tension and forbidden yearning. Hope's chest filled with heavy, choking regret as soon as it was over. She realized she had betrayed both Liam and herself. Thomas was conflicted. Part of him believed this connection was genuine and worth fighting for. Another portion realized the harm it would inflict and the patterns it threatened to reproduce. He said he never wanted to hurt anyone and that he truly cared about Hope, but intentions did little to soften the reality of their actions. The truth had a way of surfacing in this world, and neither of them could hide from it for long. Liam detected the shift before he had confirmation. He noted Hope's distraction, the growing emotional barrier between them, and how she flinched when he reached for her. His long-simmering insecurities finally came to a head. He approached her softly at first, asking if there was something wrong, if she was sad, or if he had failed her in any way. Hope averted, unable to face the agony that honesty would bring. Each avoidance increased Liam's anxiety. When the facts came out, it was brutally simple. There were no dramatic interruptions or overheard discussions, only a moment when Hope could no longer keep the lie. Her confession was tearful and fragmentary, with apologies that felt woefully inadequate. Liam listened in startled stillness as his world crumbled piece by piece. This was the most devastating betrayal he had feared. Thomas, the man whose presence had long been a source of conflict in their marriage, was now the cause of its dissolution. Anger arrived later. Initially, there was disbelief, followed by an excruciating sadness that left Liam hollow. He questioned everything, every disagreement, every period of separation, every time he had assumed that love would suffice. He chastised himself for not being more present, for allowing doubts and anxieties to separate them. But underlying this self-reproach lay a powerful sense of betrayal. Hope had chosen this. Thomas knew exactly what he was doing. Confronting Thomas was unavoidable. The encounter was tense, with years of hatred and antagonism. Words were spoken that could never be taken back. Liam accused Thomas of manipulating Hope, taking advantage of her fragility, and destroying a family. Thomas responded that Hope was not a victim. She had made her own decisions, and Liam's continual judgment and lack of trust had driven her away. Neither guy emerged victorious from the confrontation. Both were left with the unmistakable truth that everything had changed. Hope was caught between guilt and confusion. She loved Liam, or thought she did, but she couldn't deny that something basic had broken between them. Once damaged, trust was difficult to restore. She desired forgiveness, reconciliation, and the opportunity to put things right, but she was also concerned that the life she had created was no longer sustainable. Every attempt to explain herself seemed to exacerbate the suffering. For Liam, staying seemed impossible. Every part of Los Angeles carried memories of Hope and their life together, now tarnished by betrayal. The frequent reminders, the scrutiny from family and friends, the whispers and judgments, it all got overwhelming. He understood that if he stayed, he would sink in hatred and resentment. Leaving town was not an act of abandonment, but rather of survival. He wanted space to breathe, ponder, and figure out who he was after the marriage he imagined would endure forever. Breaking the news to Hope was one of the most difficult things he'd ever done. He informed her calmly, even though his heart was tearing again. He said he needed time, space, and clarity, which he couldn't have if he stayed. Hope encouraged him to reconsider, promising therapy, transparency, and anything he needed. But Liam understood that leaving was the only way he could begin to recover. Staying would just make it worse for them both. Everyone involved with Liam's departure felt a surge of emotion. Family members took sides, gave counsel, or tried to disguise their disappointment. Some encouraged Liam to fight for his marriage, reminding him of their past and the love they once had. Others applauded his decision, recognizing that once shattered, trust may never be entirely restored. Hope was confronted with both severe criticism and unexpected compassion, forcing her to face the repercussions of her actions in all aspects of her life. Thomas, however, was forced to deal with the consequences of his decisions. The affair had not provided him the bliss he had expected. Instead, it left him alienated and filled with remorse. He insisted he still cared about Hope, but he was also aware that any future with her would be constructed on the rubble of someone else's grief. His attempts to reach out elicited varied responses. Some recognized sincerity, while others saw the same destructive tendencies emerging. Liam's departure signaled a turning point. The city felt quieter without him. Hope found the absence painful. Every day reminded her of what she had lost, not only her marriage, but also the feeling of identity that came with it. She immersed herself into work, parenthood, and anything else that might take her mind off the anguish. When the distractions vanished at night, she became overwhelmed with regret. She repeated every decision, every opportunity to stop before everything came apart. However, time has a way of compelling us to reflect. Away from Los Angeles, Liam began to rediscover aspects of himself that had previously been obscured by continual emotional upheaval. He questioned his own habits, his proclivity to flee when things got tough, his inflexible expectations, and his dread of being wounded. Distance provided him clarity, but not tranquility. The love he felt for Hope did not vanish when he left town. It persisted, difficult and unpleasant, refusing to be easily resolved. Hope returned home to confront the slow, tough process of accountability. She stopped making excuses and began to address the underlying issues that had led to her decisions. Therapy led her to face her need for affirmation, her fear of confrontation, and the ways she had avoided dealing with marital problems until they blew. Growth was tough, humbling, and not guaranteed to result in forgiveness, but it was essential. Everyone engaged faced an uncertain future. It was unclear whether Liam would return, if Hope and Liam could ever restore what had been lost, or if Thomas had genuinely changed. What was evident was that the incident had started a chain reaction that could not be reversed. Lives had been changed, relationships remodeled, and illusions broken. Finally, the story was about the fragility of trust and the implications of silent suffering, rather than betrayal or desertion. Hope's moment of vulnerability exposed flaws that had long been beneath the surface. Liam's decision to depart was not punishment, but rather a reckoning. And as they moved forward, independently and uncertainly, they were forced to face the reality that love alone is not always enough to keep things together.